for joining me. Today's going to be a real treat because I'm going to be working on this Regal custom-built guitar. It's from around the time of 1930, so it's what people call pre-war. And this is the model number 3. They built 5 models. 1, 2, and 3 all had mahogany back and sides. The 4 and 5 had rosewood on the back and sides. The number 1 was a concert size, and it had a bound front edge around the soundboard, but not a binding on the back side. Number 2 was also what they call a concert size, but it had binding on the back. And this one's a little bit larger. It's the Grand Concert number 3. Bound front and back, mahogany back and sides, ebony bridge, ebony fingerboard. It has a through saddle. Somebody at some point put these non-slotted pins in it, which I would not have advised doing because it cracked the ebony slightly on the bass side pin because of all the force of the string and the unslotted pin all jammed down in there. We'll be replacing these with some ebony slotted pins with abalone dots. So I've worked on a few Regal guitars in my career, but none of them were of this type of quality. This one has an X-brace soundboard, and it really is comparable to like a Martin Single 18 that was built around the same time. Here you can see serial number 2715, Regal Musical Instrument Company, Chicago, Illinois. This is also where the Harmonies and Stellas and those guitars were made. So we'll be doing a neck reset. We'll also be fixing that bridge that I mentioned. One of the tuners is missing a screw, and some of the tuners don't turn very well. It's almost like you have to use vice grips to get it up to tune. It's been really, it hasn't traveled. This guitar was given to my customer from a friend who really said it was just kept under the bed or in the closet its whole life. It's been passed down from generation to generation, and it's a real pleasure to work on it and get it back up to snuff. Because the neck reset's going to be a whole lot of fun, I think. The first thing I'll do is loosen the fretboard extension. I did this by placing a silicone heating pad inside underneath the soundboard on the inside through the sound hole, and a sealing iron across the top of the frets. It heats it from both sides, and it allowed me to get a really clean separation with my long palette knife here. Now I'll remove the 15th fret. I'm sorry, let's make that the 13th fret. This guitar has the neck to body joining. The neck joins the body at the 12th fret rather than the 14th fret like a typical guitar, a modern guitar. So we're removing the 13th fret, where I'll drill a couple of holes to gain access to the void behind the dovetail. There's a mortise and tenon dovetail joint, and there's a little gap in between the tenon and the mortise, typical of a typical guitar construction from this era, 1930s. I usually come in about 9 millimeters from the edge. I use a little awl to get my hole started. It's a fairly exaggerated height discrepancy from the bass to treble side on this ebony bridge. I'll start off with a 1/16 wood drill bit, angling slightly towards center. And we've found the void. I'll put a piece of masking tape across the drill bit so I don't go too far. I ended up moving the drill holes 10 millimeters from the edge. 9 millimeters was just hitting the sides of the mortise. Alright, so it's the hot wire foam factory cutters, foam cutters. Turn these guys on for about 12 minutes. I'll add a little bit of water so that we don't scorch the ebony around the opening of the fret slot. We'll do that every couple minutes. I'll also add some boiling hot water down into the area. Try to get some steam working. I did this all on the same day where I was gluing the neck back on a 1976 Gibson Dove Custom. That's what you can kind of see it in the background over there. Every time I set a neck, I pull another one at a time. Once in a while I'll have two necks popped at the same time. Actually right now I do have there's a 76 Dove and a 77 Dove in for the same type of repair. Refret and a neck reset on both. But the little Regal, we're going to try to get away with using these frets. They're really super tall. They're 50 thousandths of an inch, but they're only 75 thousandths of an inch wide. So they're really weird feeling. Definitely got that railroad track feel when you're sliding your hands up and down the neck. But unless the owner of this guitar really has a problem with them, we're just going to leave them in. We'll do a light leveling after I reset the neck. Felt like it was hung up in the middle a little bit, so I was just making sure that we didn't have any glue in around the edges, which it didn't seem like there was. So I put the heaters in there again for another 10 minutes. And keep trying. A little shot of steam probably would have been the best bet. With a little patience, it comes off. And there was a giant, weird, like not a very well shaped or well fit shim on one side. I think it was still stuck on the mortise side. It was down in the body side, on the neck block. We'll clean this up with some hot water in a little while. Yeah, there's that shim. I'll end up soaking it with water and getting a razor blade in there and pulling it out. I use some wet paper towels around the whole area, clean it all up. Yummy. Now I'm going to do some French polishing to the back. This original finish was some sort of shellac-based finish, so it ends up cleaning up pretty nice. I did a few areas with a paintbrush and a few areas I was just wiping. It seems like a combination of the two works best. So this is super diluted shellac. It's probably more half and half. It's like a 1 pound cut, maybe even more diluted than 1 pound. Just dab it in here and there, and then I'll go over the entire surface with the wiping. It's kind of fun. Wipe them if you got them. Usually takes me 3 or 4 days to apply a French polish. Good times. Okay, so I did a few things over the last 2 days with that French polishing, and the very last thing I do is go over it with a very diluted French polishing pad, diluted with denatured alcohol and mineral oil, and go over the whole thing, fast, quick, kind of smooth everything over. Then I let it set for a few days before I buff and polish. But now back to the neck set. We're going to change the neck angle and re-glue the neck into the body. So I'm going to explain this a little better this time than usual, because this one's not quite as complicated as some of the more recent neck reset videos that I've done. Okay, so this is the way it was sitting in there to begin with. Okay, so now we want to change it where it's tilted back like this a little bit. So this is how I do the math to figure out exactly how much material I'm going to remove. A little wedge-shaped bit of material all around this part of the heel. I'll show you what I do. So this is kind of a good visual of what's going on here. See this wedge of this void right here? We kind of want to reverse that and add the wedge into this part. That way this fits up against the body nicely, and that creates a big wedge over here. And we'll want to fill that in with a wedge so that the extension doesn't curl down too much and look bizarre. Okay, so how much of a wedge do I want to remove? First thing I figure out was how much I want to lower the string action at the 12th fret. In this case, I measured it at like 10/64 or whatever I decided it was. Like, it was damn near, what, 6 millimeters. I want to lower it about 1.5 millimeters at the 12th fret, which means I would lower the saddle 3 millimeters if I had a saddle. It's kind of a hypothetical, but it's the measurement we need. 3 millimeters. That's how much we want to lower the saddle. Also, we have a neck heel length of 78 millimeters, and we have a distance from the neck to body joint to the saddle of 316 millimeters. So 3 times 78 divided by 316 gives us 0.74 millimeters to remove from the edge of the heel. Let's do it. This times that divided by that gives us the amount. It's that easy. So I'd like to chuck the guitar neck up into this total vise because I can take it like this and I can move it down like this. Okay, back up like this. I'm going to mark, which is actually the owner of this guitar is Mark. Okay, we're going to mark this. I like to take my feeler gauge to 0.74. It's just a sliver. Not even a millimeter, just a teeny little sliver right there. And I didn't show too much of this in my most recent neck reset videos due to the fact that they were maple necks. And I had to chisel and use power tools and all kinds of crazy stuff that I'm not going to have to do with this one. This one's more traditional in its mahogany build. The other thing you might want to decide when you're carving away this area is if you want to raise the saddle up or leave it where it is. In my case, we kind of want to leave it where it is. We don't want to go too high with the saddle. And we don't want to overset the neck. I don't want to overset a neck on a very delicate guitar like this that shouldn't have a tremendously tall bridge or saddle. Alright, so we'll just continue that line for maybe a couple centimeters worth right there at the end. That's it. Just right there. That'll do me. We're going to sneak up on it and not overset it. That would be best. I like to take 80 grit stick it sandpaper and I put it on this Lexan caul with a little sanding block that I've beveled the edges on. And if I recall, I did about 30 swipes per side. That seemed to get me right about into the ballpark where I needed to be. There's a little area in the middle that doesn't get hit, so I have to remove that afterwards. A little dimple. More like a little hill. Anyways, remove any material that may cause interference. There might be little splinters of wood that might hold us back. I like to draw an 1/8 inch pencil line around the whole perimeter and make sure I've done a relief cut inside. I'm going to give you guys another angle of this, and you'll see that the Regal factory already, right from the start, they already undercut the heel quite a bit. And this is a little trick that some of my colleagues have told me to do is If you notice that the mahogany is getting a little punky, and when you carve it, it tends to, the end grain starts separating, wick in some thin CA glue just to stabilize the wood. That's after you've chiseled. Actually, you could go ahead and just do that right before you start chiseling. I remember someone telling me that. I'm using a 220 grit, or a 120 grit sandpaper right there. And then I want to decide whether or not I want to make a sort of a concave surface on the tip of that heel cap, which I do. I want to make it concave so that it fits, that it marries up with the body a little better. So this, go back and forth a couple times, put it on the body, put it back into the vise. Here you can see that massive undercut that they did at the factory. And put a straight edge on it so you can see. So I don't need to remove any more of that. That's already way too much removed. Alright, we'll be warming up some hot hide glue in this little double boiler here from Lee Valley. I'll prepare a little bit of boiling hot water right here. I'll transfer it once it boils. I'll transfer it into there, and I'll give this a little while to warm before we glue in the shims. I'll show you these shims. Look at this 1959 Gibson LG1. It's like brand new. No one ever touched it. The inside is brand new. There's no dust inside of it. It's just immaculate. Brazilian rosewood. Brass. Hello. Alright. So, look how loose it is. I've already got the shims sitting in there loosely. And it's still completely loose. So I think I'll actually double up one side of the shims. I'm going to clamp it down and see if one side or the other needs to be shifted slightly. I'm thinking I'll double shim it, or I have some thicker maple, some thick maple veneer. It might be great to use for this. Okay, after this hide glue gets up to temperature, I'll use it to apply these maple shims. I warm up the area with a hairdryer. That gives me a little longer open time. And then we slather the hot hide glue on both surfaces. I decided to double up the shims on the base side of the dovetail tenon. So you'll see here, this is why I have two of them. And one of them, the one that I put towards the tip, actually gets quite thicker. It was one of those neck pocket shims from Stu Mac for bass guitars, the ones I use on the fingerboard extensions. I had a little cutoff of one that worked out just right. I'll clamp this up and set it aside for 6-7 hours, maybe overnight. And then we'll have to refit the neck. Okay, now we got her all jigged up. I call these the Allen supports. These don't come with the total vise. But I've got them at McMaster Car. Okay, so that baby, that's holding the guitar nice. These are the Luke hold downs. They support the body from the top and bottom. They pinch the rim. Yep, and the neck is unsupported by anything. Now this, watch this. And this is where I use the scissor jack to push the thermoplastic caul up against the heel as I string it up to tension. That helps me decide if I've got the neck angle correct or not before I commit to gluing it up. Looks like I'm going to have to be making a new one. This one doesn't fit very well. So I'll warm up the water again and throw in some fresh beads of thermoplastic. It looks clear when it's hot. You see it right there? I've got one about the size of a juju bead. And then I close the scissor jack and it forms around there. I had to put a little foot down on it there so it cradles the bottom of the heel. But anyways, hold it up against there like that for about 10-15 minutes and it cools to a white color and it hardens. But that's what it looks like when it's pliable and warm. It's almost translucent. Now we can come over here and start tightening up the strings. Such an odd angle. As I pushed in, it wanted to push the thermoplastic down, or friendly plastic. So I put this dense foam underneath it to catch it. And now, as I tighten the strings, I look at the string alignment, you know, from the edges of the fretboard. Make sure the high E doesn't fall off the edge. Low E looks closer to the edge than the high E. Acceptable range. I've got to check a couple things now. So the next thing I'll check, up to tension, out of tune, but up to tension, is 4/64 action on the bass side. That's pretty low, right? For an acoustic guitar, pretty low. What kind of fall away do I have? Fall away. Not bad. We've got 6/64. So 2/64 of fall away. That's perfect with our 1 degree shim. What is that in millimeters? That's 1.5 millimeters at the bass string, 12th fret. That's like shred guitar low. But that's good because looky, we still got our original low saddle. It's basically the same height as the bridge. We can get a new saddle and we can add a little bit of height to it as needed. Last thing I can check is my neck relief, because if our neck relief isn't right, that could throw the whole neck angle off. But as you can see here, we've got minus 0.007, 7/1000 of an inch relief. Perfect relief. I love that. So it's a done deal. The neck angle has been changed. We've got to glue on the fretboard wedge. For the fretboard wedge, I like to use hot hide glue. This is the traditional glue that was used 100 years ago, and it's still used today. It's just one of the best glues that you can use on instrument repair and restoration. You don't want to use tight bond glue on stuff like this. The hide glue, if you need to disassemble an instrument and reassemble it, it's best to use the hide glue. It's the cleanest. It doesn't destroy the wood. It's not a modern synthetic at all. It's water soluble. You warm it up and it sticks to itself. When it cools, it's rock hard. It doesn't creep. It's not elastic. It's always been the best glue for stringed instrument repairs. Always will be. No matter what comes along, I'm sure it will still be used. The violin luthiers will always use it. And so I will always use it on special guitars. I'm going to trim a little bit of the excess of this fingerboard wedge with the Japanese saw. I cut it so close that I didn't get to use my microplane. I can just use this here pillar file. And then a little 80 grit sandpaper on a craft stick. We'll end up sanding it up to 320 grit before I apply this black-brown pen from Mohawk. Color in the maple, make it look like ebony. We'll do all three sides. The Pro Mark pen from Mohawk. Furniture touch-up stick. And then once I've colored it in, I'll get out the Glue Boost Fill and Finish Ultra Thin, and we'll wipe on about 3 coats of the Fill and Finish over top. And I don't think I caught footage of it, but after the glue dry has cured, or after the Fill and Finish is cured, and I spray it with the glue dry accelerator, and I put on 3 coats, I hit it with some 4/0 steel wool to dull it down, and well, you couldn't even barely tell there's a wedge on there when it's attached to the body. It looks tremendous. And this guitar, you'll never be able to tell unless you put a straight edge across it, but the sound hole has sunk a little bit from like where the bridge is to the shoulders of the guitar. The sound hole has a little bit of sinkage. It has a little, it's caved in slightly. No big, it's not like a big deal, but it does want that fingerboard to pull that fingerboard extension down and cause excessive fall away, which I don't like. So it's definitely a good purpose for putting this wedge on. Now that I'm ready to fit the neck and glue it back in, I use hot hide glue, the luthier's best choice. Scooter, what are you doing? All right, so I warm up both areas with the hair dryer, and then I slather it on, working fast. We'll get it down in the mortise side of the dovetail. We'll get it on the soundboard, and we won't apply it to the sides or the heel cheeks. Okay. Slap it together and put on a single bar clamp just to press it in. Just hold it while I move it over to the Propper's guitar workstation. There's that little setup where it grabs the rim and it grabs the tail block, and it's unsupported at the neck and the head. And then I'll put that thermoplastic caul in place and tighten down the scissor jack. Here I use 1 C-clamp, 1 sound hole clamp, and 2 quick grip clamps. This fingerboard had a 20-inch radius to the top of it, which you can't tell from the pictures. But the other thing about this guitar I thought was interesting to note was that the scale length of it is the Gibson scale length, the 24.75 or whatever they call it. It's more like 24.675, but that's what it is. And next day, I'll go ahead and remove the clamps, and now it's time to buff off the French polish. I use various compounds and waxes to get all that oil off there. A cotton towel always works good. Looks like there's a little residue still left on there. I'll use a little McGuire's Ultra Cut compound. Now it's looking pretty good. I like to rub it by hand. Something about the oils in the palm of your hand help to smooth up the final finish on that. That's a little Luth group trick. Now I finish it off with a little carnauba wax on my random orbit polisher. I heated up the bridge and removed the old bone saddle. It was glued in place, so you have to use heat and water, and it's quite a struggle getting it out, but I'll clean it up with a micro chisel, a toothpick, and a paper towel. Clean up all that old glue residue. Now I need to make a new saddle. This one was a little too low. I just want to add 1 millimeter to the top of it and a little more of a radius to it. I need to put a 20-inch radius on my new saddle. The old saddle had, it was pretty flat. I'll glue in the new saddle with fish glue. Fish glue allows me to kind of slide it back and forth and get it perfectly aligned. If I were to use hot hide glue, it might just stick in there. Wouldn't be able to adjust it. But fish glue takes 24 hours to cure, so I'll throw a couple clamps on here and set it overnight. And then I filled in the bridge pin. There were some slots at the very front edge of each pinhole, and I filled those in with ebony dust and CA glue. Now I'll go through 120, 220, 320, and 400 grit sandpaper. To make it look nice. And in hindsight, I should have done the sanding and everything before I glued in the saddle, because I have a chamfer tool that I like to use, and it works better if the saddle's not in the way. But maybe next time I'll do it in the right order. All right. I think a little bit of furniture wax would be nice on this one. And then I'll clean out the fret slot at the 13th fret and reinstall it. I just use a little bit of Franklin's liquid brown hide glue for that. Now I'll go over, I leveled the frets. I'll do a little recrown and polish. I'll also run the maroon Scotch-Brite pad over the fretboard wood. And I'll use all the grits of sandpaper to go up and over all the frets. The Music Nomad fret guard for Gibson electric guitars works perfectly on this fretboard. In between 1000 and 1200 grit, I like to use the gray Scotch-Brite pad. I'll go up with a 1500 grit, 2000, and some 4/0 steel wool. I'll vacuum that up. We'll put a little bit of Dunlop lemon oil on here. Lemon oil, that cool, refreshing drink. Now I'm going to try to fix these tuners by rotating the gears. I don't show it in the footage here, but I did end up removing the tuners from the peg head. It was much easier to reinstall the gears with the tuners off. But you just move them right on down the line, just like you're rotating car tires. Whenever you get a stiff gear, that I just found out. And it was perfect timing, because I was looking at Instagram last night and Retro Fret had that post, and I was like, that couldn't be more perfect timing, because I was just getting to finish the Regal tomorrow. And there it was. exactly what I needed. Had to scroll for like a half hour of a bunch of bullshit to see what I needed to see, but I guess it was worth it, because now the tuners work great. Yeah, so yesterday before I did my final setup and everything, I was like, these tuners are done. But I was looking on Instagram, and Retro Fret had a post where he said to rotate those babies like you're rotating tires. I can't believe how good it worked. Concludes this video. I appreciate you guys tuning in this week. I hope to see you soon. Later.